Okay, this tutorial is going to cover creating part templates, specifically a part inch Ansi template. And some applications in academia could be the fact that you may want, if you're teaching a Solidworks class, you may want to have a tab here that has your course number, maybe the instructor's name, that all the students would go to and pick a template so that you're all starting with the same settings. And we'll go over how to create that tab. Also, some industry examples would be if you're doing work for multiple clients. Of course, each client may have its own tab here, WSI Inc., Acme Inc., whatever, and in those particular folders will be part assembly or drawing templates with specific settings for them. So let's get started. You can see here I've got one that's titled Paul's SolidWorks Templates. You obviously want to have that, but you should have one labeled Tutorial. So let's pick the part template that SolidWorks gives us and say OK. Now the problem that we have is we really don't know what the units are or what many of the settings are at this point. So I'm going to go through and show you some settings that I found that work very well for a part template. And of course, if you want to change those, you'll certainly know how to modify them and resave out as a different template. So here we go. One of the first things I always like to do from the heads up toolbar is change the view orientation to isometric view. Okay, isometric view. I think it's helpful to be able to see the three planes and their relation in space. Another thing I like to do is go to your view menu, and I like to make sure, okay, that there's some, these are how you turn them on and off, but I like to make sure that my axes, temporary axes, are turned on. Okay, so I'll click that. Also from the view menu, I want to see that my sketch relations are turned on. Alright. Also, what I'd like to do is go in to some other options here. I'd like to turn on the origin as well. I like to see origins. Okay. So we're going to turn that on, and you'll notice in the middle of the screen the origin turned on. And now you can see why I like to see the isometric view be my default view when I open a template, because when I'm explaining to students which plane to draw on, it's very visual at this point. Alright, let's go in and look at some options. So I'm going to go up here to the options menu. Alright. And I'm going to look down and go to my document properties. And I'm going to head right to my units. Right. Now, opened up saying that I want to create an inch, part inch Ansi template, so obviously my units need to be inches. I'm going to be doing some machine shop type drawings and modeling, so I'm going to put my length dimensions out to 3 places when I'm entering dimensions in the box when I'm creating sketches. My dual dimension, well, the units I'm going to use are millimeters, primarily because my primary unit is inches. My dual should be in millimeters, and we run those out to 2 decimal places. I'm good with the angle being in degrees, but however I want to just change that out to 1 decimal place. The length, mainly academic, but I'll put it in 3 decimal places, mainly just for being able to grade parts to see if they're modeled properly. Alright, so we'll say OK to that. Let's go back into options again and go to document properties. We'll get good at going to options and document properties, very important. Alright, I am going to go to my drafting standard and change it from ISO to ANSI. Okay, personal preference there. And I'm going to look down through some of these system options, and you can see that there are a lot of options. Okay. And I'm hoping yours are going to be fairly similar to mine because, again, I'm using one of SolidWorks' default templates. So we'll say OK to that. And now we're going to do a file. Well, actually, before we do that, I want to make sure that you have an ortho button added to your heads-up toolbar. If you don't, follow me. You can see mine's already there, but oftentimes it's not there. So we'll add it, show you how to do that. So you come up here to the Tools menu and go all the way near the bottom to Customize. Okay. And if we go to Commands, alright, we basically click through these categories to find the command that is going to have our normal to but. And you'll notice your initial inclination is to go to Views, but that doesn't work, so that's okay. Let's go to Standard Views, and sure enough, there it is. If you want to add that to your heads-up toolbar, simply click, hold down your mouse button, drag it, and drop it onto your heads-up view toolbar, and it'll be there. Alright, very simple. Again, I don't need to do that because mine's there. So if you want it there, stick it there. I highly recommend it. All right, what do we have left to do here? One thing I really don't like on is this instant 3D, so I'd turn it off. Personal preference again, but you can see it's dark if it's on. I'm going to turn it off. Never have really liked that for beginning SolidWorks classes. It tends to add some confusion to things. All right, so let's save this as a template. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go File, Save As. Now, important step, under the Save As type, I need to change the file type to a part template. Okay. Now, one thing that happens is as soon as you change the file type to a part template is it automatically sticks you in the location that SolidWorks saves its templates. And we typically don't necessarily want to save them there. In fact, what we would like is a folder that's specific to us or our class or our company that we're modeling for to save that template in so we can access it easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my documents. I'm going to just create a folder called SolidWorks class. Okay. And again, if you're in academia, this may apply. And say OK. I'm going to double click that folder because I want to save my template in that folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a file name. Now, an appropriate file name for this example, it's going to be a part file, so we need to put part. I guess the units were inch and the drafting standard was Ansi. So part inch Ansi would give me the description I would need to know to pick this template, as opposed to part millimeter ISO or something like that. Again, make sure it's saved where we want it to be and hit in the correct folder and hit save. Alright, now we're going to close this and notice that it's open. Your part template is open, so we want to close it. And if we go up to our File New, you'll notice it does not show up. That tab, SolidWorks class, does not show up. Okay, we've got to do a couple things in the options to get that to show up, and that's okay. It's easy to do. So let's hit Cancel. I'm going to go up to my options. Okay, Document on File Locations, and I'm going to filter it for just my document templates. Okay, and you'll notice I have two folders, two paths to document templates. Well, I'm going to add one. And all I'm going to simply do is add one to this SolidWorks class, okay, that I wanted, and say OK. And now you'll notice that it goes to my C drive, my name, documents, SolidWorks class. I'm going to say OK. And if, and only if, there is a valid template, whether it be a part, assembly, or drawing template, in this folder, it will now show up. So I'm going to hit OK. And it's simply saying here, hey, would you like to make the following changes to your search paths? And of course, I've added this search path to go look for templates, so we should say yes. And I'm going to say File New, and you'll notice in your SolidWorks class folder you just created, there is your template. And now when you're going to start class or start modeling for a client, your settings will all be saved. You can open this and start doing your modeling, and when you hit save, it doesn't overwrite your template. It starts a new part file out of that. Alright, that's the end. We'll see you later.